The Third Worst Year by TheFrancakes, read by LMX Mabella. 4. Roughly 258. Romanian August was hot, beyond hot. Draco wished he'd worn shorts, and he was not a short sort of man, even if he had nice calves. For most of the day, Draco trekked across the sanctuary, following Charlie as he pointed out the accommodations for each breed of dragon. For the most part, Draco stayed interested. He did want to know where he'd be living and figure out his meal of choice when he turned. Did he want a lakefront cave or one hidden in the forest to hide in the cool shade? What would the menu be like? Would he grow tired of cow and want something different like pig? How did one request that sort of change? They used portkeys to go from dragon den to den, peeking in on sleeping dragons or ones bathing in the sun. Charlie mentioned they could side along, but the portkeys were in safe spaces that wouldn't accidentally land you right in front of a sleeping dragon. The dragons all seemed content and happy for the most part. There were no chains or even invisible fences. According to Charlie, they could fly away and never return. They just didn't want to. It wasn't that they were domesticated either, but that the dragons were smart and preferred peace and safety than ransacking villages and being chased by pitchforks. It was peaceful, though. It wasn't a bad future if you really thought about it. Draco tilted his head to the side as he watched a Norwegian ridgeback drink from a stream, causing the water to stream when it dripped down the side of its mouth. "Have you ever heard of someone turning into a dragon?" Draco asked, breaking the silence. The dragon's eyes shot right at them, but it didn't seem to care about the onlookers and went back to drinking. Charlie turned, though, furrowing his brow, making his sun-kissed freckles wiggle. "Like an animagus?" "Sure," Draco shrugged. "No, not in my experience." Charlie shook his head, a long auburn hair falling into his eyes, his voice low and gruff in a way you would expect. "Why?" Draco shrugged again. "No reason." The ridgeback extended his wings and used them to move a soft breeze through the trees, cooling them all. "Would be pretty cool, though," Charlie said, breaking the silence once again. "You think? I think it'd be lonely, with everyone being so scared of you, thinking you might hurt them any second." Draco hummed thoughtfully. "Not even worth giving you a chance, really." He thought about the last few days, how Potter had avoided him at work and said nothing that wasn't work-related. Maybe he had been too drunk to remember. Maybe he did remember, and he wanted nothing to do with Draco's feeling. Maybe the pastor ran deep and Draco was just an idiot to think things were any different. Draco knew he'd been stupid to confess anything. He still had no idea why he had. "Sounds like you're talking about more than just dragons," mused Charlie with a chuckle that matched the sunlight. "Huh, maybe." Draco blushed softly, shifting on his feet awkwardly. He looked back at the dragon, at the stream that had laid down to take a snooze in the sun. "Might have more in common than just the name." "Like being beautiful and strong?" Charlie asked, raising an eyebrow and smiling over at him. Draco's blush darkened. "I don't know about that." "I do." Charlie nodded, hands in his pocket. "I think it's time to show you the other thing us dragon keepers get up to out here." "What's that?" Draco asked. It was now his turn to raise an eyebrow. "Get bloody pissed." Charlie laughed, clapping Draco on the back and apparating them back to the keeper's village. 257. Getting drunk with the dragon keepers was not a smart idea. They were World Cup-level drinkers. Bottles of whiskey were drained in shot competitions, and they introduced Draco to muggle drinking games. He was exceptionally good at the one where he threw a snitch-sized ball into cups, but a comical joke at trying to flip his cup over correctly. Granted, he'd been so smashed by then, he still wasn't sure which way the cup was supposed to land. The night quickly got away with him due to the buzz of the liquor and the pressure of being Draco Malfoy dissipating quickly. No one seemed to care about the past, about the war, about his cowardly deeds and awful choices. They all shook his hand and welcomed him into their club the second he sunk a ball perfectly into a cup. It was how he wished life always was. It had been easy to get lost in the night of being anyone but himself. which is maybe why he started returning Charlie's secret smirks. Why he let the dragon keeper hold his hand under the table and pinch his ass when no one was looking. Why he wet his lips when he caught Charlie looking at them. Why he didn't put up any fight as he was pushed up against the wall on smoke break and snogged the fuck out of the man. He didn't taste like cloves, but it was close enough. Honestly, those lips must have had a lost spell cast on them. They ditched the party quickly after that. It was a drunken haze how they got back to Charlie's place or even lost their clothes. But he remembered the sex. It was good. Really fucking good. It was bent over the couch and got railed until you couldn't remember your name. It was lifted off the ground, legs wrapped around his waist, muscles pulsing and being impaled deep on his cockwood. It was fucked so hard so many times you sleep in too late to sneak out before the other person awoke, and you had to face all the shame of the things you moaned and how many times you came good. Draco found Charlie in the kitchen, fixing coffee and some breakfast for both of them. He wore joggers low on his hips that didn't hide away the part of him Draco remembered being intimately inside of his mouth the night before. "Made some breakfast so you don't portkey on an empty stomach." The freckled man smirked as he placed some toast and eggs on the counter. Draco liked how he wasn't ashamed about the scars across his chest. He'd never had that sort of confidence with his own. He had that rugged sort of bad boy element that was sexy no matter what way you looked at it. "I don't know how empty it is. Might still be a little drunk," Draco chuckled, pulling his shirt over his head and sitting down at a bar stool across from Charlie. "Yeah, it's just liquor in there," Charlie teased with a wink. "Oi!" Draco gasped and threw a napkin at the men, causing them to break out into laughter. As he took a sip of his coffee, Draco was almost glad he wasn't able to sneak out. Maybe he'd gotten a good fuck, but he'd also seemed to have gotten a good friend. It was the first time in a long time that he felt like himself and not the person the Wizarding World decided him to be. Maybe he wouldn't be so alone when this life was finally over. 242. For the most part, Draco had been doing better since visiting the Dragon Sanctuary. While knowing life as he knew it had a definite end, he was starting to feel as if that still didn't mean it was the end completely. Sure, he would be a dragon. Sure, he wouldn't be able to communicate with his friends. Sure, he'd have to live in a cave. Sure, he probably would light the forest on fire when he sneezed. But at least it wasn't going to be completely over. He'd arrived back to work a little more confident, feeling a little better about himself with Charlie's words as armor. It wasn't until he realized nothing had changed that everything started to falter again. Work was work. His colleagues ignored him and spoke to Potter. The paper wrote about how Potter saved the day and Draco was plotting against him. And worst of all, Potter was back to the silent treatment. The first day, Draco did his best to not let it get to him. He did his best to think it was Potter, not him. Maybe Potter had a bad weekend, or maybe he was tired from a good one. But when Draco asked, Potter just gave a shrug and said it was fine. It could have been a lie. It was really none of Draco's business. It's not like they were close friends. But the way that Potter looked at him, with a bit of hurt and confusion, Draco felt a pang of guilt in his heart. The pang only festered as the days went on. Whatever high Draco had gotten from his weekend in Romania quickly dissolved. Unfortunately, that wasn't the worst of it. The longer the silence stayed between them, the louder it got. Whenever they had to speak about work, Potter was short and curt with Draco. In turn, Draco started to snap his replies and leave passive-aggressive notes on Potter's desk. As retaliation, Potter started stomping about and throwing down files. He could even make a single sheet of paper hitting his desk be loud and obtrusive. Finally, after so many days, Draco snapped. "Bloody fucking hell, Potter! What is it?" Draco sniped, throwing his quill on his desk after Potter spilled his ink by slamming a drawer. "What is what?" Potter sniped back. "I don't fucking know. You've been pissed off at me for whatever reason for almost a month now." Draco pushed back from his desk, using a wandless spell to clean up the ink. "No, I haven't," Potter muttered. Draco shot him a scathing look from across the room. He remembered Potter having a temper at Hogwarts. He supposed this was his attempt to keep it in, instead of his little outbursts that ended in Draco bleeding on the bathroom floor. "You know you're a bloody awful liar," Draco said, crossing his arms. Potter glared from behind his glasses, taking the bait and finally giving Draco his full attention. Fine. What I don't get is, you go from being my friend and then at the club. Potter faltered for a moment, licking his lips as he thought of the words, probably trying to remember through his liquor. At the club, you just ditched us without goodbye. That's what this is about, that I didn't say goodbye? Asked Draco incredulously. For a moment he'd been worried there was more to it, that Potter remembered what he had said, but the brunette across from him, with wild hair and wide green eyes, didn't hint at anything more. Well, that, and... Potter faltered again, took a breath, and then spoke once more. You also barely spoke to me afterwards, and then spent a random weekend with Charlie Weasley of all people. You hate the Weasleys. First, you barely spoke to me, and second, I don't hate the Weasleys. Most of them, anyways. Draco scoffed. It was a business trip. That's not how Charlie made it sound, Potter muttered, offhandedly under his breath, but Draco still heard. The blonde pounced at the accusation. Draco rolled his eyes. Oh, so that's what this is about, that I fucked Weasley? Potter's eyes grew wider, if possible. The anger broke into shock. His voice went grave. You fucked Charlie? More he fucked me, if you must know. Draco hated the words as they came out of his mouth, but he was on a roll now. His petulant, immature side was winning over the rational side, yelling at him to stop because he could see something transforming in Potter's eyes that he couldn't quite place. He'd never seen it before in one of their rows. Right. Well, then never mind. Forget I said anything, Potter muttered, standing up and starting to pick up his things. Potter, what the hell? Draco grumbled, not sure whether their fight was already over. I think it's best if I finish these up at home, he said, rushing towards the door with his files under his arm. Draco swallowed hard and remembered a conversation all those nights ago. Harry, Don't, Potter snapped. Don't call me that. Draco pressed his lips together and nodded. He didn't have to ask why. He knew they weren't friends any longer. 5,273 hours. No, you self-hate. You're too cute for that. A grey kitten with blue eyes yelled at him from the calendar this month. Clearly, the kitten had never self-sabotaged their life by having a one-night stand with their crush's best friend's brother. To be continued. Thank you for listening to today's chapter of The Third Worst Year by TheFrancakes, read by LMX Mabella. If you would like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, AO3, or Tumblr.